basic manicure with Elliot. And so we're just going to follow the steps in my book for a basic manicure. And typically the first thing we do is remove any nail polish or clear that he might have on his hands with a lint-free wipe. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I know you don't have any clear, any nail polish. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the nail polish or any clear that he might have on his fingers. I'll take the other hand too. Okay. Alright, so we remove the nail polish, and then I'm just going to go ahead and push the cuticles back and sterilize. I also just put some alcohol to sterilize it.
You got this stuff.
It's just some alcohol, just to kind of, sterilize and remove any shine. We're going to go ahead and start with the pinky. And start to gently remove and shape. We're going to take some cuticle softener and use that as well. So this is another one. This one.
In the decades that followed, Twister went on to sell tens of millions of units, and it has become one of the best-known games of all time.
Just following the grow line. And the reason we shape before we soak is so that the nail is not too soft when we go to file it later. If you have to answer that, that's fine.
It may come back with a huge vengeance when you least expect it. One good game on late night, suddenly you're tied up in knots.
You know, icebreaker at your party? You know, works faster than booze? Putting your friends in somebody's face. And that's how you play Twister, folks.
I'm very big on the pinballs. As a child, my father was loaned a Dolly Parton-themed pinball machine. Every morning I would stare at the delicious animated cleavages of Dolly Parton. I would go bing, bing, bang, bang and watch those balls.
If you see any dirt, just after he's soaked, you can clean all that out. So the grow line on the sides to kind of shape them out.
You don't know about pinball, kids. What?
A game called Bagatelle was a staple in Europe for centuries.
Bagatelle, so it was made of carbohydrates. What is Bagatelle?
It's a plank of wood with a bunch of wickets, like little studs mounted to the board.
You hit the ball with a sort of pool cue. The ball travels up the corridor to the right, then falls down the middle, randomly landing inside pockets with different values made of the wickets.
I love Bagatelle. I've had it every morning when I'm in Pisa hanging out with
Is this your first manicure?
Bagatelle was a
You've had one before?
institution until
Yeah, I'm sure you have sisters.
A designer named Montague Redgrave moved from the UK to Ohio and began manufacturing the tables. But Americans found
Is this your first one? Have you ever gone to a salon to have one? Have you ever gone to a nail salon?
No. Redgrave made an upgrade.
Redgrave's innovations changed.
So I'm trying to put your fingers are supposed to kind of hang. Yeah, there you go.
Added metal pins instead of dowels, and even added a spring-loaded launcher.
With the pins in place, folks started calling the game pinball.
The 1930s saw a huge rise in the popularity of pinball. In 1932, there were 150 companies producing these machines, and they were in taverns all over the place. And because these machines had a spring hole, but no paddles, they were purely games of chance. Perfect for betting.
Now, these were the roaring 30s. Unscrupulous pub owners would offer cash for high scores. Think of it like a horizontal slot machine.
Okay, I'm going to shape this one.
So heavily associated with gambling, New York State outright.
You can text if you have to.
Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia even went so far as to conduct raids on the taverns housing these.
He has nice fingernails. nice and healthy. No fungus, no bit and cuticles. It's really healthy fingernails.
In under a month, 4,999 pinball machines in New York City have been destroyed.
And similar bans were put in place in Los Angeles, Chicago, Philadelphia, even Salt Lake City.
Now I don't want to comment. I don't want to put on some concrete boots and end up at the bottom of the Hudson. So I think it was a good move.
Then, one small-time inventor made a tiny tweak that would transform pinball from a game of chance to one of skill.
In 1947, David Gottlieb introduced the first person-powered paddles with his game Humpty Dumpty. When and where you do this is definite skill. That's not luck. See that? That's skill.
By 1976, with the flippers now embedded in the game, the pinball ban was ridiculously outdated. Until a pinball enthusiast would show up at a city council meeting intent on convincing politicians to change the law.
On one side, politicians who insisted that pinball was a game for gambling. On the other side, magazine editor and pinball enthusiast Roger Sharp. His testimony in front of the city council was literally playing and beating the game. This one brief moment convinced the powerful politicians that pinball was a game of skill.
But you still don't bet. My skill is better than your skill.
With that, New York dropped its ban against pinball, and many other cities quickly followed suit.
My glasses are all
Over
falling.
the years, pinball was forced to weather many storms, particularly in the 1980s and 90s when video games and other home entertainment began to appear. Developers attempted to make the machines more exciting by introducing pop culture themes, but it didn't work, and by the mid-1990s, most of the major developers had to shut down their operations.
There are still a handful of companies making these machines, and they cost about $5,000. But there are plenty of vintage games out there, and they'll run you about $1,000. That would be $4,000.
I find it exciting that
Let me
you
see if
take
they
a
match.
ball and hit lots of rods and see if it enters a hole.
How they look.
It's not sexual at all. Actually, it does remind me of intercourse.
Ooh, bubbles.
Let's blow some bubbles.
If I remember correctly, I guess I don't remember correctly. I thought you could also go like that and bubbles would happen, but no.
It's so satisfying.
Ever since there was water, there have been bubbles. But bubble blowing? Different story.
Bubbles are orbs of air trapped inside a soapy film. When the molecules of the soap surround the air, they create kind of a housing that traps all the bubbles. Kind of like a soap sandwich.
Alright, so then now we're going to go ahead and put cuticle softener on his cuticles and allow him to
What I always looked for as a kid,
soak.
which was non-toxic. I should be able to get one off.
I should have let you do one hand. While
Thanks.
I did the other.
You know what would have been clever? Doing that last.
Alright, go ahead and put your hand in here.
Chardin unveiled this painting titled Soap Bubbles.
And just,
It depicted a young man leaning out a window and
and
blowing a
then we'll
bubble.
go ahead and
Almost a century
Some
later,
cuticle
one man would
softener.
turn art into commerce.
and
It was
the
in
other.
1918 that inventor John L. Gilchrist formally filed for the first patent of the bubble pipe. He began to sell this pipe with a bar of hard soap and a bowl, and then kids would mix the soap with water, drop into the chamber, and blow.
And then I'll just kind of try to start a little bit softly pushing cuticles back since the other hand is soaking.
I'm gonna smoke a pipe, bubbles are gonna come out.
Then, in 1946, a company named Chemtoy mixed the liquid soap with glycerin and called it bubble soap. Glycerin is a fat that attracts moisture. When you add it to the soap mix, it prolongs the bubbles by slowing down how quickly they dry out. This makes for a longer and sturdier bubble, something everyone wants.
Chemtoy's liquid mix was all the rage, as was the bubble pipe. So, Toy company Kenner jumped on the bubble bandwagon and introduced the bubble gun, named the Bubble-Matic.
The Bubble-Matic was a metal gun that came with 5 tubes of concentrated bubble solution. Kids would fill the gun with water, then load the bubble mixture into the top chamber. A small dial would release variable amounts of bubble solution into the water. The more juice, the bigger the bubble. Once the trigger is pulled, a burst of air inflates the bubble mix. A plastic version of the gun was later introduced, and the mix was replaced with concentrated bubble powder.
Okay, I'm just letting him soak his hands a little bit.
Didn't travel very far.
It was in 1960 that a man named Arthur Fulton patented an adjustable loop attached to a long rod. This allowed for a massive increase in bubble size using just a minimal amount of bubble solution.
He dug deep into his creativity.
Alright, go ahead and give me that hand.
To sell his invention
We're gonna
as
change
the
sides.
Look at everybody, they were just watching this magic.
Just kind of hang your hand right here. There we
bubble
go.
business was booming. Bubballoons were joined by all sorts of manual and battery-operated bubble blowers. And by the 1980s, there were so many ways to blow bubbles, the business blew
His
up.
fingers are such a good shape that it really doesn't take
Bottles of bubble solution were being
much of
sold.
anything to push his cuticles back
In
and clean them up.
1987, inventor David
You can
Stein
see all
wanted to
that
break a world record.
gunk.
He wanted to blow the biggest bubble ever recorded. So he created the bubble thing.
Much like Arthur Fulton's invention, the bubble thing had an adjustable loop. But this device had a weight attached at the bottom. The weighted opening pretty much guaranteed a supersized bubble.
It's not enough to have a great little wand. It needs to be bigger. It needs to be mega. Everything is mega.
There we go.
Well, I have to swear.
Ooh, look at that. Who's a street performer now? Not me. Well, I did it the way I wanted. I don't see instructions on this. So, I like this.
No, I definitely did these as a kid.
Wow! Oh, oh my God, this is a new world. Stein succeeded. His bubble invention set the world record for the longest free-floating bubble. It was 50 feet long. That record would stand until 1996, when New Zealander Alan McKay busted out a 105-foot mega bubble. Both bubble boys use the same solution that kids have been using for years. From pipes to guns to wands to loops, the bubble blower is evolving simplicity at its finest. You just can't be in a bad mood while blowing bubbles.
How about that?
Look at this. That's Jupiter. And that's, as the kids say, Uranus. Without innovation,
Almost ready.
where would mankind be? Probably still living in caves and entertaining ourselves with rocks and sand. That's why we're telling the stories behind mankind's most incredible ideas.
This is the true spirit of inventiveness, hard work, blood, sweat, and tears.
Do one more quick soak on this side.
Insanely brilliant. What do they do?
And then put your wrist over here again, and we're gonna. There we go.
Back things that I haven't seen since I was a child.
All have a story to tell.
Gee, Christmas.
Now get ready to go back in time in the throwbackiest episode ever.
What is this, like a not so smart phone?
We'll unleash your inner child.
This is government-funded bull.
Summon your youthful spirit.
I'm not moving it. You moving it? Someone's moving.
And spring, bounce, and bubble our way back to a simpler time.
Wow.
Wow. So, are you in the mood for some memories?
You ready? Because it says I'm horny.
Well, here we go.
You are about to witness the most amazing man-made jewelry ever created.
Sorry, I know I'm getting deep, but you have dirt there.
This is the ring that senses your...
You want to make sure you don't do it too hard, not to scrape his nail plate.
The incredible chromosome senses thermal changes deep within your body.
This is a... You rub it? Oh, come with me. I have to rub this.
I had one, but I was terrified of it. Like, I never wanted to put it on because I was afraid it was going to say something to me. Like, you're going to die. But I was very neurotic as a child.
In the early 1970s, Joshua Reynolds was working a high-powered, high-stress job on Wall Street.
Sorry.
After nearly burning out, he decided he wanted to take his life in a different direction.
Can you bite that one?
The heir to the Reynolds tobacco fortune turned to a local meditation center to find himself. Well, actually, he was so rich, he bought the meditation center, and he called it Q-Train.
While at his meditation center, Reynolds began to study biofeedback. This is a way of knowing things about your body in order to change your body, long before Fitbits and Apple Watches could do this for us.
My mood is garlic.
Reynolds soon connected with a local inventor named Maris Ambats.
Together, the two of them brainstormed how they could create a device that would display one's mood.
A temperature-sensitive liquid crystal was already being developed for use in thermometers.
These two inventors decided to encase this crystal in quartz and affix it to a sterling silver ring.
They called it the Mood Stone.
So the first mood ring was called the Mood Stone, and they made it the Mood Ring. That's like when Justin Timberlake told Jesse Eisenberg, it shouldn't be the Facebook, just make it Facebook.
We all know the human body runs hot, around 98.7 Fahrenheit. What you
Alright, just rest that there. I'm going to take this one back.
State, your brain decides how much of that hot blood can flow to the extremities. When we're afraid or anxious, the brain sends that hot blood to the core, keeping it near vital organs. And when we're happy or even sexually aroused, the blood flows outward to all types of places, like your fingers. And that's how the mood ring works. It all depends on how you're feeling and how your blood is flowing.
So, using that science, they developed a less scientific key to track your alleged mood.
Black means you're stressed, red is fear, yellow is nervous, very light purple is very happy, light green is mixed emotions.
So this is saying I have mixed emotions. I think that's absolutely wrong, but also right.
Blue is calm, pink is cool.
I don't need a mood ring anymore, because I have a wedding ring. And I just look at it and I think, oh, I'm supposed to be happy.
So I had the hood mood ring then because I only had like 5 colors to choose from.
And green is romance.
Oh, it's full on green now. I am horned up. I am so horny.
The Reynolds Meditation Center loved the ring. So in 1975, the Mood Stone became the Mood Ring.
I want to get down with everyone.
And as people put it on, it took off.
It's like, let's go get...
With his tobacco riches, Reynolds had the means to widely distribute the ring. Jewelry stores, catalogs, and an epic commercial made the invention of viral.
Alright, so now that I've cleaned them all off, I'm just going to put some extra cuticle and then paint and we're done. Okay, puppy?
Try to get mad, so change.
The ring sold 40 million units in just its first few months.
You only want to get, you know, what you know is dead tissue.
Hi there, people.
Be very
If they knew
gentle.
you well, I'd be, is that a mood ring? And if they didn't know you well, they'd go, wow, that's an ugly ring. What is happening there?
Well, no one really knows what they cost to make. It's a safe bet that Reynolds and Ambats were rolling in the green. But then, after less than a year on the market, the mood changed.
The mood rings did not like water.
One drop would short-circuit the crystal.
Excessive heat, too, had a detrimental effect on the ring.
The bad press, questionable quality, and diminishing buzz pretty much killed the fad overnight.
By 1977, the world had a stunning revelation. They did not need a piece of jewelry to gauge their mood. His ring never again reached the popularity it once had in the mid-70s, but that's okay by Reynolds because he never got around to patenting.
But Josh did just fine, and the mood ring concept has evolved. Today's smart rings communicate through your smartphone and will provide instant feedback to you and your friends. So while the invention may have changed with the times, the mood certainly hasn't.
You ready? Because it says I'm horny. I'm not gonna get this Ouija board away from me.
Has this been used before? I'm a strong believer in that things carry residual energies.
I don't like these clippers because they keep slipping.
I'm gonna be possessed by devils and demons tonight.
Would
And
you
my
ask
clippers
your
keep
question?
wanting
I'm
to
good,
slip.
actually. I'm really fine, guys.
The Ouija board. A cardboard slate and a plastic triangle with supposed mystical powers that have been sending messages from the dead for over a century.
I won't be partaking. I know my limits. I'm good.
In the 1800s, they were called spirit boards. Participants call out to a spirit. If the spirit responds, it spells out letters, numbers, or it answers questions with yes or no.
It's like you're texting the dead.
So how did this otherwise useless slab become a mouthpiece from the
Did
great
I hear him
beyond?
just do that?
Yeah, just look.
In 1886, the Associated Press were reporting on the use of spirit boards in the Midwest at spiritualist meetings.
In 1890, Elijah Bond, a patent attorney, and an investor named Charles Kennard saw a niche market they could exploit and decided to produce these boards for the masses.
They kept the same layout as spirit boards. All the letters of the alphabet, the numbers 0 through 9, the words yes, no, and goodbye. And in case the spirits wanted to take a shortcut, there were a few symbols and graphics. He adapted the planchette just slightly, and his wood spirit board was ready for market. But the device, if you want to call it that, needed a name.
Elijah was no stranger to the occult. His sister-in-law, Helen Peters, fancied herself a psychic medium.
They were sitting around the Ouija board, and they didn't know what to call it at the time. So they decided to ask the spirit world, what shall we call you? And it spelled out Ouija. The most amazing part of this, whoever was like sneakily moving the board had happened to see somebody else at the seance wearing a locket that had this famous women's rights activist Rita on it. So Rita's name was above her head in the picture, but they misread it. So they pushed the thing to spell Ouija. So they had bad eyes. And that's how we allegedly have the name.
Kennard and Bond were so convinced they were on something, they marched into the U.S. Patent Office. The patent officer insisted they prove the device worked. And he says, if this board can spell out his name, he'll approve them for the patent. They all sit around, they get the board together, and the planchette amazingly spells out the patent officer's name. Perhaps, as a patent officer, maybe Elijah did a little research before the seance and found out the gentleman's name.
What? The guy who created this was a shyster?
You don't say. It is claimed that the officer was so visually shaken by the demonstration that on February 10, 1891, Elijah was granted his patent.
Have
Science generally explained how something works, but in the case of the Ouija board, it didn't. It just said it works.
But does it?
I got a Ouija board for Christmas when I was about 8 years old. I couldn't get it to work.
One of my friends actually had her hair pulled while playing the Ouija board. I don't need it. I don't need that.
It's a psychopathological response. Idiometric, can you use that in a sentence? Kind of thing where there are these tiny muscle movements in your hands that are actually kind of doing what
Is
you
the
want
bottom
the thing
supposed to
to
be
do.
blocking the way?
In other words, if your brain thinks something, the
Nope.
brain then moves the muscles in your hands without any conscious awareness. If there's a group participating, it is believed that there's always a dominant participant moving the planchette.
Basically playing Ouija, what the dialogue is a lot of, I'm not moving it, you moving it? I'm not moving it, you moving it? It's moving. And it's creepy, but someone's moving it. They ran an ad in a New York newspaper that said, proven at patent office, price $1.50. Within 12 months of placing that ad, they had sold 2,000 Ouija boards.
By 1892, the Kennard Novelty Company went from 1 factory to 7. And by 1893, Kennard and Bond cashed out. After a bunch of legal wrangling, William Fold, an original employee and protege of the founding team, was sold the majority stake in the game for $1.
Full ran the now thriving company for close to 2 decades, until the Ouija board told him to build a new factory.
It's like this thing
And
keeps slipping off.
In 1927, he had a freak fall from that factory's roof and died.
Will I be paid a lot of money for this appearance? Producers?
Yes. With Fold's heirs overseeing the operations, the Ouija board was in enormous demand. In 1966, the Fold company sold the rights to Parker Brothers, which years later would be acquired by Hasbro.
By 1967, Ouija boards would be outselling the big daddy of all board games, Monopoly.
Really? People are more interested in demons than capitalism?
If you go to the gravesite of Elijah Bond, stenciled on the backside of his headstone is an actual Ouija board.
I don't have any desire to communicate with people who are no longer with us. That was me. That wasn't a ghost.
Okay.
Hello?
What am I looking at here? I started it. Oof. It's just blinking now. This is kind of complicated.
Merlin was a 1978 gaming device that would influence everything, from the Game Boy to the iPhone. Bob Doyle has enjoyed an impressive career, beginning with a PhD at Harvard and a job at NASA. But what's really remarkable is how he looked at computer technology and recognized that it could be used for the 20s.
In the mid-1970s, the miniaturization of diodes and logic chips were changing the electronics industry. Doyle started a small company to capitalize on the burgeoning personal gaming market. He and his team attempted to build a handful of small mind games by hand. It was a painstaking endeavor.
Hello? I was going to call my agent.
Get me out of here.
He realized that instead of building the concepts from the ground up, he could simulate his games by manipulating the then groundbreaking storage process of the HP calculator.
His company partnered with Parker Brothers to collaborate on an all-new project. Doyle, being a computer specialist, believed that microchip tech evolved to a point where he can develop a multi-purpose electronic brain game.
The prototype had 11 buttons, each of which had this transparent plastic contact switch with a red LED underneath. Originally, it was housed in a white plastic box, but Doyle felt it looked lame, so they settled on this new red plastic design that looked like a phone.
What is this, like a not-so-smartphone?
They called it Merlin, the electronic wizard.
Inside the device was the Texas Instruments TMS 1100 chip.
The Merlin was able to fully operate on 2 kilobytes of memory. And to put this into perspective, today's iPhone has a memory of 256 million Merlins.
small handheld devices were able to play just a single game. But Doyle crammed 6 games into one device. Tic-tac-toe.
Okay, so it just blocked me from making 3 in a row. Rude.
Echo.
Where you had to memorize which lights lit up when.
Magic Square, the pattern game like Lights Out. Mindbender, which was similar to Mastermind.
You have to guess a sequence of colors.
Mindbender.
Blackjack, variation of a card game.
Oh, now we're talking. Button 4, blackjack. Well, I had the Wanderlust.
And Music Machine. Pretty much the first consumer sequencer.
Teach Merlin a tune.
My goal is not to hurt you.
As he plays it back to you.
Oh, this is exotic for a Jew. Silent Night. 6, 0.
4, 3, 2.
Oops, I'm a 2, 3, 4. I read it backwards.
It's asking me to compose the song, though.
4, 3,
I don't know how to play Beethoven.
0. 0 to 1.
I'm not getting it, guys. Like, this is kind of hard. Oh god, I feel like I should be getting it, and it's not making sense to me.
5, 6, 6. 5, 4, 3.
Alright, so now what? I'm sorry, that took way longer than it should have.
Really long space?
Remix, this is sick.
Almost done.
Bam! Merlin drop. Merlin, the electronic wizard, made its debut at the New York Toy Fair in 1978.
This is from 1978? Good on you, 1978.
I was born in 79.
When it finally debuted to the public, it was an instant hit, and it earned Doyle and Merlin a shot on the cover of Newsweek magazine.
Reception was extremely positive, and by 1980, Merlin sold 2.2 million units in a single year. The device retained
Alright, so now that we've gone ahead and cleaned all the cuticle, we're going to just buff and paint, and we are all set.
unknown. What we do know
I just like to do a little light buffing on the top. Get any extra.
Merlin would go on to sell 5.5 million devices in its impressive 2-year run. But although a couple of revamps were attempted, eventually it would be outshone by other devices like the Game Boy. This is pretty good proof that it's not always the first mover that takes the cake at the end of the day.
Do I want to buy one of these? Yeah, I've got papers that need holding down.
Bob Doyle didn't close up shop after his Merlin life. He would go on to develop software for Apple computers and create one of the original podcast software systems. These days, he's taken to writing philosophy. Perhaps a bit more relaxing than his original invention.
Alright, so now what? I'm gonna go home tonight, I'm gonna read a book.
Alright, base coat.
Without a care and makes the happiest sound. Any guesses?
Yeah, there you go.
One more hint. It writhes up and down just like a clown. Nothing?
Oh, it's on the edge of my brain.
Everyone down to sleep. You want to get asleep.
The Slinky is, without a doubt, my favorite toy for 5 minutes.
In 1943, Richard T. James was a naval mechanical engineer stationed at the William Cramp and Sons shipyard in Philadelphia.
The Richard James Slinky story will be illustrated by famous mime Slinky de la
Okay, put that to the side real quick and give me the other hand.
Ways to secure heavy shipments.
He stumbled upon a heavy, spiral piece of metal called a torsion spring. A flexible spring that stores mechanical energy by twisting its end along the axis. Like the kind you find in garage doors.
He observed that the spring was wriggling around on its own motion.
Kind of like he was dancing on the floor. He was able to perform tricks like traveling down a flight of stairs end over end.
Top
And
coat.
it's aided by gravity and its own momentum.
And
Thinking this would make a fun toy? Goes home, asks his wife Betty and the kids, what should we name it?
Flipping through the dictionary, Betty comes up with the word slinky, which means sleek and graceful. James and his wife took out a $500 loan to form James Industry, and they produced their first 400 slinkies.
I should have done a gel base.
James took his entire inventory
And not
to
that.
Gimbel's department
Because I'm
store
painting one of your.
in
You still want one of yours black?
in
Sure.
90 minutes.
Preferably good.
Now, Richard
I just want to take this off because I just realized I want to do
He
a.
invented a machine that flattened 80 feet of steel wire and then spiraled it around a spindle. The mechanism then cut the twisted
gel
wire
base
into a
coat.
2.5-inch spring, or 98 coils. That's taking the length of a blue whale and twisting it into the size of a goldfish. And what about the walking downstairs
Okay.
rack? When a
Did
slinky
you
sits
do
atop the
this?
Did I do
staircase,
that one?
gravity keeps it
There's
still.
nothing on there.
Push the
But
slinky, and Newton's second law comes into play. Provide force to an object, and it increases acceleration. Contrary to how it looks, the slinky doesn't walk. It somersaults.
case.
In its first 2 years, they sold 100 million slinkies at
Base
$1
coat.
a piece.
But the fun wouldn't last.
The cord to that should be like next to you on the floor somewhere.
James left his
Yeah, I'll take it.
5 daddy, 5 kids.
It's out of here, right?
I went off to join a group called Wycliffe Bible Translators in of all places.
Okay.
So,
Oh, well, not yet. I'm gonna put the base coat and do the black fingernail.
to translate the Bibles.
Nah.
Wait, give me your
This
thumb.
kid must be pissed.
Richard donated the family fortune to the church. On the brink of financial ruin, the lady of the house took control.
Betty takes over James Industries and raises the kids.
She became the company president, and now Betty was the boss.
Wow. What a ton of events.
Go ahead and put it in.
As boss, Betty took control, and she created a new advertising campaign and a tune that became the longest running commercial jingle in history.
What's the there without a care? It's just so high in the sky. Up and down like a cloud.
The slinky, the slinky, the slinky.
Alright, then
Now
we'll
that's
need
gonna be stuck in my head.
hands.
for
When
days.
it goes to 30, I'm gonna put the other hand in. Go ahead and put the other one. And I'll take this one.
Sold Slinky to Kook Products in 1998.
Between 1945 and 2005, over 300 million Slinkies have been sold.
Betty would pass away in 2008, but at a time when inventions were dominated by men, Betty would prove that no matter how tough things got, don't mess with a woman on a mission.
A Slinky 2.0.
I love Betty. Betty took it to the next level. Hats off to her. Look at other boss, babe.
The wife of the man who invented the Slinky is a badass woman, and they should do a movie about her with Laurie Metcalf.
Oh, I was hoping for this one.
It looks like a plastic egg, because it is.
Did I put this
The
hand in?
genius of it was what was inside. Silly pipe.
They say you can't make an omelet without cracking some eggs.
Yeah.
So, let's break open the history of this totally useless invention.
Are you torturing me? Oh, God. Got it. I know what this is. I'm just curious to get it out. There it goes. There it goes. I used to use this all the time. I was obsessed.
Silly putty is a mixture of silicone oil and boric acid. And what makes it very special is its viscosity. It behaves in a different state of matter depending on what forces are being applied to it. If it's just sitting there, it kind of oozes around like a liquid. If you form it into a ball and you toss it, that rapid kind of force that's being applied when it hits the wall is going to cause a bounce.
You can snap it. You can stretch it.
Where's
So
my
how did this 80s substance become the toy industry's golden egg? To fully bring this story to life, please welcome the silent partner of the last mime you saw.
Oh, that's too long. Put the other one in there. Give me that. My hand again.
During World War II, most materials were in short supply needed for the war effort, including rubber. And so the U.S. government put out an urgent appeal for anyone to come up with a rubber substitute.
Around 1943, James Wright of General Electric answered the call from the U.S. government to find a replacement for rubber.
How could this be a wheel?
So, Wright hit his lab and concocted what he hoped would replace rubber.
Alright, put this one in.
It didn't.
The government saw the material as simply too porous, malleable, and spongy to have the same strength and durability as rubber.
And, well, it was useless.
As is often the case, the material's patent and rights were shared between the inventor and the company they worked for.
The smell of it, the feel of it, the touch of this useless piece of rubber substitute. This is government-funded bull right here.
In 1943, Wright is taking it to cocktail gatherings, showing people what it can do.
After all, while his goo didn't change the world, it was fun to play with. And Wright thought that maybe
Put
there
it
was a
in
fun
there
toy
again.
hidden in his mistake. He named it Nutty Putty, and unsuccessfully tried to get a couple of toy companies to buy in. They didn't, and Wright pretty much gave up. 6 years later, an advertising executive named Peter Hodgson got his hands on the putty.
Hodgson paid a measly $147 for the product from Wright and GE. They saw the putty as a failed experiment. But the ad man with a vision dropped the Nutty Putty name and immediately trademarked the invention
You want
as
to take your hand out of there?
Silly Putty.
In the spring of 1956, Hodgson hired a bunch of Yale students to plop an ounce of putty into red plastic eggs. It was a promotional look just in line for Easter, and the kids loved it.
If you give it a sharp cut, it'll break like a biscuit.
Silly Putty was a global hit.
Then, in 1968, Silly Putty went to the moon. Literally. The Apollo 8 astronauts took Silly Putty with them into orbit in a specially made
Put that here.
silver egg.
Give me this one more time.
In addition to amusing the crew, the Silly Putty was actually used in practical ways in zero gravity, like to hold tools in place so they wouldn't float away.
But Silly Putty's probably best known for two qualities that are its least useful.
You can flatten it out, and then you take it, and you put it on the Sunday comics.
Up until the 90s, newspapers and comics were printed using petroleum-based ink. When the putty was pressed against the ink, the petroleum would dissolve, allowing the putty to literally suck it up, creating a carbon copy.
Oh! Would you look at that? It worked.
And the putty's unique molecular makeup causes it to bounce 20% higher than standard rubber.
Yeah, it doesn't bounce straight, but it's that pretty deep bounce.
Alright, put that in.
Are you ready?
See?
You see the color of the black now? I put a matte on it. Look at the black now.
By the 1970s,
It's not shiny
sales
anymore.
reached $5 million. For perspective, that's over 35
Cool,
million
right?
today.
There's a bunch of different stuff I could use, but
At the time of his
we're gonna
death
do
in
that for now.
1976, Hodgson's empire had accumulated...
And then I'm gonna moisturize last, and I was supposed to moisturize and then paint, but
300 million eggs.
I'm gonna allow him to
Boom. Boom.
put some lotion on him.
Boom. This is fun.
Alright, I'll take that here. That's done.
Guy walks into a bar. The beginning of every bad joke. But in this case, it's the start of a great invention.
The lava lamp is a wonderful, useless lighting device for a tabletop.
Edward Walker was the rare combination of a world.
And then we're just gonna do a quick
and an avid nudist.
hand
I'm
massage.
sure was probably an amazing dude to hang out with. Because after he told you, hey, I invented the lava lamp, you probably then said, you want to see my...
One night, just after the war, Walker was drinking in a pub when something behind the bar caught his eye.
The rudimentary device was fashioned
A little bit
out of
more
a glass
cuticle
cocktail
oil.
shaker filled with a waxy substance and water. Once the wax got hot enough, it would bubble up. Oozing bubbles meant the eggs were done.
And the other one.
Bubbly mixture gave
Give me a little mini manicure.
and the same
Massage.
technique used to develop living, breathing art in a bottle?
This guy was just drinking in a bar, looked up, saw an egg being boiled, and had his eureka moment of invention. Which says to me, we all need to start drinking more.
So, the nudist took to his workshop and
And a little bit more cuticle oil, and you are all set.
First, he needed to find a material that, when mixed with
Manicure's
heated
done.
liquid, would bubble up just like the eggs.
And then I need to take my glove off.
The liquid that was used was mainly water in a mucousy blob.